It's been a long time since we have been in the garden together. I want to give you guys a garden tour and a garden update. In the very front of my garden, I have an area where I had a cover crop of winter rye, crimson clover, and hairy vetch. And that grew over winter and it started to flower, brought in a lot of pollinating insects, and then it was time to get rid of that crop before it all went to seed. The kids are helping me in the garden today. I need to crimp this cover crop behind me and then we're gonna tarp it. Last year Cam and I did this. This year I taught the kids how to do it because it's a really good exercise in being coordinated and working together as a team. So we're gonna try this out and see how it goes. Very good. I guess that's another way to crimp it down. Thank you. Good girl. The next row over, we had lettuce there. We had celery, kale, and cabbage. I harvested the cabbage and the lettuce because those were all finished up, and then I planted some green beans in that place. Fourth and fifth garden beds, I had snap peas in here and I had shelling peas, and those are super short-lived crops. I plant them in the middle of March and then we are done harvesting by the middle of June. So we finished harvesting all of those peas. We pulled out the peas, and in the fifth row I planted cowpeas. And where the snap peas were, we haven't finished pulling everything out yet. We still have some carrots that we've been harvesting here. The lettuce is starting to go to seed. So I'm just pulling all of that out, and the next thing that I'll be planting after that is black beans. In this row here, I have sweet potatoes in the front, and then in the back of this row, I have cucumbers. So we recently harvested all of our garlic. That was what we had in this row here. The other day I was weeding my garlic, and about a quarter of the way through I realized this garlic is super ready to be picked. And so I just said it would probably be a lot easier for me just to go ahead and harvest the garlic and weed at the same time. So I left it and we're coming back today to finish the job. It was over 500 bulbs of garlic. We took them into the shed to let them dry there. Cam made a cool little rack for them. And then in the back we have some green onions. This row holds our bulb onions. They grew really well this year. And then in the front we have sweet alyssum. It's a flower that brings in a lot of good pollinators. The next two rows have basil and peppers and tomatoes. And I have my determinate tomatoes over here. I've had a lot of people ask me what I do for trellising the determinate tomatoes. I use the Florida weave method for those. The bigger ones I've trellised already. The smaller ones I have not gotten around to trellising yet. Right here, this is where my asparagus is. Last year I trellised this up by putting string around it. I did the same thing again this year. I left the T-post in place. It's been really good because my asparagus will flop over if I don't have it trellised up somehow. So this has worked great. These next two rows are strawberries. They are in need of some maintenance. We have a lot of weeds in here. Early on, I decided I wasn't going to use like black plastic or tarp or anything with the strawberries. Honestly, over the last couple of years, I have regretted that because it takes so much time to weed them, even though I really try and avoid using plastic just because I don't want it leaching into the soil. I feel like in the case of strawberries, that's one area where when I replant these again in another spot, I will use some kind of ground cover because it's just so time consuming to keep up with all of the weeds. Behind me we have 2 rows of potatoes. We plant the Kennebec variety, and we plant those with the seed that we saved back from the year prior. The potatoes have been growing super well this year. We put hay on the potatoes a couple of weeks ago. It looks like they need a little bit more hay at this point. We've had a couple of pest problems this year, which is really unfortunate. This is the first year ever that I have seen any potato beetles, and I have been able to pick those off and look for eggs. And so far we've been keeping that managed really well. The other pests that we have been dealing with that I'm really sad about is those blister beetles that I had last year. They are back again in full force, and I'm super bummed about it because they just eat all of the foliage down. And this year I just don't have the bandwidth to get out here every night like I did last year and shake all the beetles off and try and save my plants. It's just not going to happen. So I'm hoping by some miracle that everything is okay out here. We have dug up a little bit of the potatoes, and they're actually pretty good size, so even if they eat them all down, we'll still get a decent potato harvest. The potatoes just won't be as big as they normally would be. This year, because it was a baby year, I wanted to shrink down my garden space a little bit and do more cover crops in the other areas. So in this area, I planted 3 rows of this Sudan grass, and it's a buckwheat mix. And it's actually really done. It's ready to be, you know, chopped or mowed or whatever, but I wanted to keep it in for a little bit longer because I wanted to show you guys it before I got rid of it. It's been about 40 days since I planted this, and you can see how much has grown in that time. And it's helped suppress all of the weeds that would be here, adding a lot of organic matter, and then the flowers from the buckwheat also bring in a lot of good pollinators. In the very back here we have Who Gets Kissed sweet corn. We plant this variety every single year. It's one of our favorites, and we love it because it's open pollination and you can save the seeds from it. In front of that I have all of my melons and squash and winter squash. I have lemon squash, a winter squash variety. I'll have to look up what that was, I don't remember. And then several different melons that I also don't remember what varieties they are, but they look really good so far. We've been duct taping off the squash bugs and all of the eggs and stuff. I shared about planting my tomatoes a couple of videos ago, and doing this lower and lean method has been working super well so far. I'm excited about it because it's really easy to see and maintain the tomatoes. The only thing that I've learned so far is that it doesn't work to have different varieties next to each other because I have some that are super tall, some that are super short, and so the whole idea of like moving them all over to lower and lean them isn't quite working out how I thought it would, but next year I will do a little bit better. So aside from the tomatoes, which we're harvesting a few of those, the cherry tomatoes so far, in this middle row I had let my arugula go to seed here because I was going to save some of the seeds, which I did. And then after we pulled all of that out, I planted some dried beans here. They haven't popped up yet. That was very recently. I am planting these Jacob's Gold bush dry beans. I like to plant the dry beans in my tunnel because they dry better. We're in a really wet climate, and so as we go into the fall, it's really difficult for me to get some good dry beans to keep. So that is why they are growing in here, because I can control the water and just water them from below. There is also some of the arugula that went to seed just reseeded, so we have a lot of arugula all over the place in here. I don't know, I'll probably keep some of it for eating. We've been harvesting some of it, but I don't know what else to say. Last year I grew a bunch of sunflowers in this spot, and the majority of them reseeded here, and I didn't have to plant any of these. They just all came up, which is really cool. It's always really nice when something just happens on its own and you don't have to do the work. Some of the birds have been coming in to eat some of the seeds, and I have been chopping some of these to feed to the chickens as well. It's the black oil sunflower seeds, which are the kind that birds really like. It's been a couple weeks since I finished up the June garden tour, and I wanted to add a few things onto this video in real time. One is a reminder to get started with a fall garden. I'm going out to start my seeds right now. Planning out planting times for a fall and winter garden can be a little bit tricky because the daylight hours are getting shorter as we go into fall and winter. So I wanted to let you know about an upcoming event that's going on. It's a winter garden challenge. It's being hosted by Seed Time. Seed Time is the garden planning tool that I use. I absolutely love it, and they are going to help us plan out our winter garden. The other cool thing about this event is they're going to have on some expert gardeners, like Elliot Coleman's going to be on there, Ray Tyler, Michael Kilpatrick. So they're going to give us some tips for gardening in the winter. I'm looking forward to it myself, to plan everything out, to learn from these experts. If you're interested in joining in with me on this, I'll leave a link down in the video description with more details about the event.